Zoom to go straight to your Facebook feed?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. All right, let's get rocking here because I think we're late because of me, because I messed up, so I'm really sorry. But welcome everybody to our Ask the Experts Zoom call. I'm super excited everybody's here. So we're here with our team. That's me, Maryanne Elsaesser, Matt Chapman, Rhonda Battifarano, and yep, hi Matt, and Michele Kowal. Did Michele hop on?
I'm here.
Oh, there. Yep. Okay, perfect. Good. I'm glad you made it. And then our guest speaker, Stephanie Tengi, who's an attorney at law practicing real estate law in Allendale, New Jersey. Say hi, Steph.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Steph.
And then we have Tammy Whelan, a private mortgage banker with Wells Fargo.
Hello.
Hi.
Oh, there you are,
Thanks,
beautiful Tammy. And Gary Martin, our home inspector, and you can reach him at homeinspectionsbygary.com. So why are we doing this? The reason that we're doing this is because I found it became very clear to me that there was a lot of misconceptions going on. Like people were asking me if we were even showing homes, especially if they're coming from New York. So I decided rather than just have, you know, our agents speak on the topic of how this looks, I wanted to kind of take people through the process of what's different and what we're doing for our local residents and also for people that are coming out of state. So in terms of what's going on in the market, some buyers and sellers have asked to hold, and we're respecting that while we're updating them on information on the market. But some of them have to make the move and have to sell for various reasons. And we're getting that done collaboratively, patiently, very individually and customized, and we're sort of figuring that out. So we definitely have less inquiries from buyers, but the ones that are inquiring are very, very serious. So that sort of brings me to my next point. Is it a buyer's or a seller's market? I think right now I can say that it's a seller's market, and that's mostly because a lot of the sellers have decided not to necessarily put their homes on the market for obvious reasons. So our inventory is a little limited. In terms of where our price is going, I think we're going to be stable, and the experts are also saying that. I think the general concern in the public is this going to be a recession like 2008? And I don't think it is, because in 2008, we had a recession that was created by housing because of loose guidelines on lending. And there's tighter guidelines now, and there's statistics to show that home ownership is a little more focused on maintaining that equity in their houses. So we're not seeing that, but Tammy, you'll be able to talk more on that. And so I think right now we're not going to have a housing crisis issue. It's a health issue that sort of created an economic upset. So that's where I want to start the conversation. But in terms of what the experts are saying, so Ivy Zelman, Freddie Mac, First American, a bunch of the economists have pretty much said that we're going to be stable in terms of pricing. So I'm just going to read one of the quotes, and this is from a chief economist for First American, Mark Fleming. He says the housing supply remains at historic low levels, so house price growth is likely to slow, but it's unlikely to go negative. Steve Carney from KCM, what he said was, even though the economy has been placed on pause, it appears home prices will remain steady throughout the pandemic. Is everybody pretty much sort of feeling the same way? Anybody? Matt?
Yeah, I mean, you said it's a seller's market just before, and just to add to that a little bit, I mean, it's kind of hard to negotiate with some of these sellers at the moment because they're kind of afraid of where they're going to go from here anyway. So they're not going to be negotiating too easily. So for instance, I did a deal the other day, and we really had to come to their number to be able to even make them move on. So
right, make them move.
Make that move. So you've got to say it's really a seller's market, like you said.
Yeah, so I think the idea of the buyers expecting to get a deal right now, I don't necessarily see that. But I have a question. We'll start out with the team and how we do the showings, and then we'll move on to the other experts. But Matt, you were out a lot last Saturday with clients. What does it look like to make appointments and show properties? What does that look like?
Yeah, okay. So obviously making an appointment is just as easy as it ever was. The only difference is we have to fill in our COVID-19, sorry, that was my alarm. My COVID-19 addendum or form to say that we can the building and buyer and seller both sign that. So apart from that, that's the only real difference to booking an appointment. But I guess once you're there, it's really tricky because you have to really enforce the buyers that you're with to be a single showing. Like I'm only allowed in with one person at a time. So you have to have someone wait outside, and then you go in and you do showing with the person, and then you go in and show the next person the house, and hopefully there's no more than two because then it gets too much. So you do that. You know, everyone's wearing gloves. Everyone's really wearing masks. Everyone's really respectful of that. And I feel the buyers, they don't want to touch anything in the home either, like, because they don't, they don't know who the homeowner is. So everyone's really respectful of touching things and not touching things. And, you can get through 5-10 minutes slower than normal, but, we're out there, we're showing, we're still seeing them. And we're writing deals. So it's still happening as normal.
Yeah, you actually wrote a contract the other day. So
yeah,
a little bit different, a little bit more remote. Michele, I know you're having some challenges and delays with a closing that's not occurring and a rental property. You want to talk on that and maybe talk about the offers that you had and how we have to be a little bit more patient because townships are closed, things like that?
Sure. Well, the one deal that we're having the problem with right now, someone is selling a home in Oakland. They're going to be going into a rental property, but they don't have the money to do it until they close on the home. The home isn't closing because the town is not doing temporary COs, which they were going to do a septic and get a temporary CO. So now they've had to go ahead and do the septic on their own and get it inspected, and then they came into some other issues with getting an old permit closed out. So now it's just been kind of dragging on, and until they close the home, they're not going to take the rental. So what was going to be an April 15th lease is still not happened.
Right. So kind of coaching the property owners to have a little bit more patience, I think, is where we're going, and really more harmonizing and keeping emotions in check.
Yeah.
So, Rhonda, you actually had a closing yesterday, or no, today. Congratulations, right?
Yeah.
So talk
Yes.
to me about your walkthrough, because that was a little bit different. So normally we go through a property with the clients and do this walkthrough, and that's really not happening. And this was an apartment or a condo complex. So talk to us about what the complex actually required and how that looked.
Yeah, so it was a little different. It was in Hackensack, and actually the listing agent lives in the building, so it kind of worked to my advantage yesterday. He met us outside. I did not go into the building. The buyer and his mom went in, did the walkthrough. I stayed outside, and the listing agent went in with them. Gloves, masks, the whole thing, and then they came back out, and it was done in just a few minutes time. But it was very different not going in there, being, present with my clients. You go through this, 3-month, this one was like a 3-month thing. It's kind of, you feel weird not being there for them, I guess, in this like final moments, like the home stretch.
And
but
then also not attending the closing because we're trying to limit the amount of people that are going to closing. So I remember you had called me and said, like, what do I do? What am I not going to go to the closing? So what did I say?
Yeah, well, it's all done by email now.
It's electronic and mailed and things like that. But, again, enforcing the idea that we are getting it done just a little bit differently. So I think without a loan, you cannot close a property without the money. So I'd like to start with Tammy. And here's my question to you, Tammy. Can you tell us about the biggest changes that occurred in lending since the COVID quarantine?
Okay, well, yes, and thanks for having me, Maryanne. The first thing that I'm going to say, just to be compliant, is that my NMLS number is 271056. That's my national mortgage license number. The biggest change, honestly,
on your arm by any chance?
What's that? I have to say it all day long. Biggest changes. I mean, the biggest personal change is this working from home thing. I mean, I'm a mortgage person that tends to work. I go into my office, so I put on you know, an actual shirt today and all this.
You look beautiful.
But
I did
thanks,
my
and
hair.
yeah. So a big change is working from home. You know, but that's okay. You know, we're getting things done. I've had closings. I have one tomorrow. I have one Friday, and I had 2 last week, and then one, you know, so purchase and refinance. There's a change in appraisals. You know, that's a big thing. There is some change in certain products, or you know, but mostly, and I'll tell you another thing that's important is it varies lender to lender. And so one of the bigger changes really too is the volatility and just the difference between lenders right now. Normally, you know, there's some underlying differences here and there, but we're kind of all similar. And I'm finding you really need to stay in touch with your lender to know what sort of changes might be occurring within any particular lending institution. So that's definitely a change. You know, we're not at Wells Fargo for right now, it's temporary, but we're not doing cash out refinances, you know, so that's now that doesn't affect a purchase transaction, but when it comes to lending, that's one of our changes. The appraisal process really is the biggest change, and how closings are handled are really the bigger changes. You know, otherwise.
I think it's interesting speaking on like the appraisals. There's still some lenders that are doing walkthrough appraisals, and I'm hearing a lot more of drive-by appraisals. So what's your thought on the drive-by? Like that concerns me a little bit. Should we be concerned, or is there no liability in general?
I mean, for a drive-by, so Wells Fargo is not allowing any interior inspections at all with appraisal, and that's a Wells Fargo decision at this point. So even if, because to your point, Maryanne, there are still some interiors that are happening, but even if a homeowner is willing to allow an appraiser in, and an appraiser is willing to go in, and you know, when a month ago, there were plenty that were still kind of willing to do that, but Wells Fargo kind of took a stance that we're not going to allow that. So all of our appraisals are exterior only. So, and that can be a drive-by, it can be desktop, you know, or a combination of both. The drive-bys are really fine. You know, just not any interior inspections. And that's one of the reasons we're not doing cash out refinances for now, is because we do require an interior inspection for cash out. We're not able to do those with a desktop or a drive-by. But it's not affecting, you know, so far, you know, it's not affecting, you know, the purchase transactions. We're getting the appraisals done and in a timely fashion. So it's a different method, but it's still it's working.
Matt, do you have a question for Tammy?
Yeah, I do actually. I wanted to know, are the lenders getting any stricter with the pre-approvals? And if someone already had a pre-approval prior to COVID, should they call and get it updated straight away?
Okay, Matt. Well, you know, there's really, from my perspective, and there's really not a lot of difference with the pre-approval process itself. You know, we do, for our pre-approvals, for the most part, we do online, you know, we send a link and they do an online application, and then I call them and kind of talk through some things. I think it's always a good idea to have a good communication with your lender. And yes, in this environment, if you were pre-approved in February or March and you're still looking, or before that, you should absolutely be staying in contact. I would recommend once a week touching base with your lender, even if you haven't found a property, because that's one of, and I should have mentioned this, Maryanne, one of the biggest changes really too is the fact that there can be changes daily. You know, this is really fluid. So Matt, yes, I would recommend a weekly call with your lender regarding pre-approval. As far as changes, not so much changes, but we don't know what's going to happen here. I mean, you have to, you know, the income source has to be still there. And so, if there's issues with income, either not, somebody losing their job, unfortunately, or just a cut in income, we have to be keeping up with that sort of thing. If somebody has a mortgage now, and they're in deferment, that could play a part as well.
Yeah, I understand, because I know what you mean, because my wife, for instance, she's already been told she's going to lose her bonus, this year because of what's happened. So that's going to make it, there's a lot of people out there probably in the same position. So
yeah, bonus income is a little bit trickier right now, because there needs to be a history of bonus income, and then it's typically averaged, and there has to be a sense that it's going to continue. So just the whole income calculation should, need to be looked at. Yeah.
Rhonda?
I have a question also here. I've had a lot of questions. I'm sorry, my children are on the other side of the door here. 1 second. I'm really sorry. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
Michele, why don't you go? I'm sure you have a question.
Well, I did have a question, but it was about the drive-by appraisals, so she already
Okay.
answered.
So sorry. So sorry. Being a mom. Yay. Sorry. My question is, the question related to mortgages is always about the rates. How are the rates going right now? And does it make sense to lock a rate in early in the process, assuming things are just taking a little longer than normal?
Okay, so the rate environment, again, it's very volatile. It can change a bit daily. Sometimes rates aren't necessarily driven by market activity right now, which is another change, actually, Maryanne, with this whole thing, is that the 10-year treasury, which is kind of a base point where mortgages kind of look to a little bit, there's not a direct correlation right now, but rates are very attractive. I'm not going to go through quoting rates right now. I can't get into that. That would, because individual situations are different, but rates are very good. I would absolutely recommend locking in a rate. As soon as you have a contract, I would lock in a rate. I know at Wells Fargo, because of the volatility, you're kind of locking in the worst case scenario, and we have a float down option. So I would, even if the rate might seem, you're not sure if they might come down, or I would absolutely encourage locking a rate early on. Yes. Okay. And the rates are good. Rates are especially good with purchase transactions. And I think that is common with all lenders. Our refinance rates are a little bit higher than our purchase rates, which are super attractive right now. It's hard to know what's going to happen with pricing. I mean, again, it's just not a normal environment, and nothing is as usual. But the rates have
day, hour by hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Day by day, hour by hour.
Mm-hmm.
And Michele, can I just Michele left. I wanted to just make one more comment about the appraisals. A lot of our appraisals right now, when I put in an application, it's happening. It might not really apply to purchase transactions. I don't think it would. So, but with refinance transactions, just so you know, like a lot of appraisals are getting waived altogether, depending on loan to value and certain criteria. Some appraisals weren't, there's a waiver altogether. So, which is kind of new in this environment too.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question for Tammy? Michele? No, nobody? Okay. All right. Let's talk to Stephanie. Hi, Steph.
Hello, everyone. Hoping everyone is safe and healthy. And thank you, Maryanne, for inviting me today.
Oh, we're super excited to do this. I think it's going to be beneficial for a lot of people just to bring clarity. I see you're working in your office.
I am. I have a home office. And
are you dressed?
I have a blouse on because my assistant Jane made me get dressed out of my sweats.
That's a good thing. You look more professional this way.
So thank you, Jane. But yes, having a home office, there was really very little transition for me with the pandemic. So it's been fine and smooth. Just want to talk a few things that I've experienced in closing transactions the past month during the pandemic. One of which is just the physical aspect. We are doing closings. We're just being courteous and respectful of people's safety and health. So what we're doing is closings in the driveway. I have my clients have their mask, their gloves on, and they bring their own pens. And I go out and I go over each document and they sign them in front of me as witness. And we're doing it, whether it's a seller's sale documents they come to the house to do, or it's the buyer's documents. We are.
If it's raining, what are you doing if it's raining?
I pull out my car. I had made sure my children are in the garage. So
Smart.
embarrassing. And I have a coffee table that I could put in the garage for the just.
Wow.
It's a nice adjustment.
We think out of the box and we do what we have to do, again, to be courteous and respectful of everyone's health and well-being. So there really hasn't been a change other than the fact I like my clients at my closing table. Poor Jane likes to see clients we've been speaking with and dealing with for 2 months. So the personal aspect of the transaction is a little bit diminished. We are getting things done. It is feasible. It's happening. And I do my own settlements, but I've heard from colleagues that the title companies that are conducting their settlements, they're doing the same thing. They're pulling up next to the clients, they're witnessing, they're doing the Zoom, or they're physically witnessing next to, just to be safe and respectful of everyone's well-being.
Do you think there's going to be any legal consequences to these sort of new quick things or solutions that we're coming up with? I mean, I think that's my main concern. Like, what does this look like AC? So after COVID, what does it look like legally when we're making these modifications, like with the drive-by appraisals, with, you know, not necessarily having signatures done in the same format? Like, what does that look like from a legal perspective?
Personally, I think you're always going to have a wet signature, meaning original signature, for deeds and mortgages. I don't think the county is going to stop that in the near future. There has been a push for e-notaries. I think you may see that. There are several states in the United States that authorize e-notaries. But I still think you're going to not see too many changes in the near future as far as requiring witnessed and original mortgage and deed signatures for recording. Mm-hmm. Just my thought. I mean, we're still getting the originals. We're just doing it creatively at this point to be safe. The traditional in the office at the closing table is put aside at this point. So we're doing it a little bit differently, but we're getting it done. I had a closing yesterday. Perfect.
Is it getting easier? Like, we're almost 45 days into this. Are you starting to see like a system with the way the closings are happening with your other contemporaries, the other attorneys?
Patience is a big key right now because everybody's circumstance is different. And there are people getting ill. And I think, you know, the day of, you didn't respond to my email 2 hours ago, has subsided to, are you okay? I didn't hear from you yesterday. So we have to have a little kindness and compassion in this industry, because there are people that are truly getting sick.
I've been there, you know, 3 weeks in bed.
Right. And you know what? You may have been too sick for a couple of days to even respond. Some people are in that situation.
I actually was, so you're right.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have to have a little compassion and kindness and a little patience if things aren't getting done, you know, as quickly as they were before. But as far as my closings are concerned, I have very few delays, knock on wood. The lenders, Wells Fargo's been, yes, Tammy, that floating down rate is a huge for people. I think drive-by appraisals, they're not coming in lower. So I haven't had any issues for my clients taking mortgages out. And if anything, it's a little bit easier. But the actual physical conducting of closings, it's being done and it's being managed and worked to make everyone healthy and safe. Walkthroughs have been great. I had a closing where the seller, I was the buyer's attorney, the seller actually had the house professionally cleaned when they left, even had the carpets done to be kind and courteous to the buyers coming in with children. So I'm seeing walkthroughs pretty well going with ease and smooth. And of course, you walk through the house, the sellers are out, The buyers are coming in with their masks and gloves and shoes outside the door just as a precaution. So even those are being conducted as we always had them conducted. Perhaps the agent, like Rhonda said, couldn't really come in, but the buyers are coming in to make sure they're satisfied to close. Title searches. This is something that, you know, has been a little tricky. Bergen County right now is open, not for the public, but they are open part-time for title searches. There has not been a delay in obtaining title. Christie,
awesome.
right, Christie's uses Centurion. I'm getting my title binders from them in 7 days. Lickety split without an issue. The only hiccup has been Passaic County. Passaic County clerk has been closed due to the pandemic. There are no in-person searches. So, and their records only date back to 2009, I believe, where you could retrieve them for search. So in those Passaic County closings, Hawthorne, Wayne, you pray that the sellers have their back title. And this would be a good time for all the sellers to go and say, let me see where my back title is, meaning your owner's title policy. Survey if you have it, but really the owner's title policy is key, because that shows clear title so that they can just have to go back, you know, a short while for their search. So other than Passaic County, I've had no issues with title searches in other counties. Then the final thing that I'm seeing a little bit frustrating are the municipal inspections, the town inspections for the smoke cert and CCOs. And that's tricky because every town has a different requirement. There are still towns coming in conducting smoke detectors, carbon monoxide inspections. There are some towns that you can take a photo or do FaceTime to show that they replaced and updated the smoke and carbon and have the fire extinguisher there. And then the town, based on that visual with your phone, will sign off. And of course, there are other towns that do a more comprehensive inspection, such as Wyckoff, and they are not risking, their employees' health concerns. So with that, it's been a requirement to send a letter from an attorney's office signed by both seller and buyer, putting the onus on the buyer after they've gained occupation of the home to actually follow through to get the final CCO. The seller still does the application, pays the fee, but it's going to be, the burden is going to be transferred to the buyer to actually obtain that CFO, since now they're living in it under a temporary situation.
Is there an escrow that you're holding at that point?
We are escrowing. It could be anywhere from $5,000 to $2,000. If you look at your form contract, the real estate purchase contract, I believe it's paragraph 9, and it tells the seller's legal obligation to comply with the town requirements. Usually there's a dollar cap, $1,500. So whatever that dollar cap is, we're kind of using that as a guide for the most part, or it's what's reasonable between the attorneys. Again, if you have sidewalks, if you have a septic, we may escrow a little higher in case they're uneven and the town may come back. But we are still closing. That's just been a little hiccup in my experience with the transactions.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Matt, do you have any questions for Stephanie?
I did have a question, but actually Stephanie pretty much just answered it. It was just about the timing of closings per the date that's on the contract and seeing if that's still happening on time or not. And if they aren't on time, what's the average of it sort of being pushed back? But I guess that's already been answered. But I did think of another question because I came up with this in the contract I wrote just the other day, and it's in Passaic County. So, and I did let him know that the towns are closed there, so it's going to be a little more difficult. But there is a New Jersey Realtors addendum regarding the coronavirus that we had to sign. Now that addendum was very scary for my client to sign because he felt it was too open-ended, to almost like it would be an endless saga to close this property, and his form was allowing it to be that way. So can you explain that form maybe a little better to people?
That's a great question.
Well, that form is individual based on everybody's employment status. So Christie's has a form Terry O'Connor may have a different form. There's different forms out there. Basically, the forms that I'm seeing give a 30-day delay period. Listen, everybody in a transaction, seller wants to sell, buyer wants to buy. So we're not going to delay this intentionally. It's not going to be something we delay. Either party would delay intentionally. It's just going to be based on constraints due to the pandemic. Again, if it's Hawthorne, if it's Passaic County, you're going to have a monkey wrench, possibly, not always. I have closings in Hawthorne right now because the sellers had their owner's title policy, so there's no gap in title, and title was marketable, and that closed on time. So it just depends on the seller providing the information. That pandemic, that COVID-19 form can be a little daunting. I think most of us are adding a provision in our contract writers that say it's based on reasonable timetables, based on reasonableness. So, I mean, we just have to go by that. My closings, for the most part, are occurring on time. I've had a few delays. Example one, unfortunately, the seller, I represent a buyer, seller was going to an assisted care facility, and due to the pandemic, they're under quarantine. We can't move her. We can't move her right now. So we are just hanging on and being patient and understanding under the circumstances. So that has been delayed. I had a client who lost her job. It's coming back once the salon's open. But she, of course, couldn't qualify for her loan now. So we were creative, and she was fortunate to have family members to co-sign. To add them onto the mortgage and deed, it took an extra 10 days to close that transaction. So there's been a few minor hiccups, but I would say the ones I just mentioned are the hiccups, and all the other closings have transpired.
So Matt, and to all the other Christie's agents, I just got a text from Darlene. I think she's streaming it on Facebook Live. She said, we're only using the New Jersey Association's forms, and we're not changing them as some other companies are. Did Stephanie answer your question, or was it more of a health sort of concern that your client had?
Maryanne. Okay, yeah, no, it wasn't a health thing at all. It was more of just, you know, he wants to close and he wants to get things done quickly.
Right.
And he felt that form was too open-ended and made him feel like he could be hanging on for 6 months here, you know, if the one little thing came up. So, you know, he signed the form, he was fine with it, but it was an objection that I kind of came up against, and I kind of felt his pain. It was a little
Right.
open-ended, and I wanted to hear it from an attorney's perspective of what they thought. So, and I think
We usually change those a little bit.
of course.
Just
We
modify
always
them a
do.
little bit.
Yeah.
That's our job. That's our job.
Rhonda?
Hi. I think that Stephanie answered all of my questions. I was curious about the title searches and the CCOs, and I think you answered that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Does anybody else that's on the call have a question for Stephanie? Nobody? Kim? Sam? Anybody? No? Okay. Steph, is there anything else you want to add? Oh, Doreen, you just popped up. Do you have a question?
I was just going to say what Rhonda said. I think she answered everything, and I have a closing tomorrow that's going to go through with the same way you're saying, the wet signature with the attorney, the car, and one agent doing the walkthrough in the morning.
The hardest part for me is not the socialization. And yesterday's closing that I had in the office, I actually taped on my front door for easy access, the agent's check and the closing disclosure. And it broke my heart because I didn't see her. You know, it was just those situations where I love to see her, and I just wanted her safe and to feel secure. So, you know, that's the hardest part for me, is that's not my nature. So it was hard, but we do have to do. Checks are ready. Checks are being issued. Closings are taking place. It's just being a little creative and doing it in a safe, respectful, kind manner.
Right.
I agree. I think the lack of that personal connection is the thing. you know, especially if somebody's buying a house, like you want to give them a big hug and say congratulations. And, you know, you want to be their biggest cheerleader because sometimes it's been a long road, and just, you know, having those communications on the phone, it's not the same, you know?
Right.
Not. And the first time that you're meeting your buyer, you want to shake their hand. You want to have them see your face. You want them.
Sometimes I want to shake their hand sometimes.
So, but I'm saying in the past, that's how we like people in
Yeah.
this business. We're people. We're huggy, touchy, kissy. We make a lot of friends through our transactions, not just people who buy a house and we never speak to again. We build relationships for years. So it is hard.
And of course, not seeing the agents in the office, you know?
I know, I miss everyone.
Well, that's true. I mean, you know, we talk, you know, Mary and I, we know each other for a long time, and we want to know how the kids are doing and how the family.
Boy Scouts.
And Boy Scouts and all that fun stuff. And, you know, that lack of the socialization has been difficult. That's been a challenge for me, but
Yeah, it's hard.
through this, and we will persevere, and eventually, you know, the quarantine will be lifted and we'll be back to our normal self, kind of. We may just have to exercise a little bit healthier cautions in the future, but
Oh, I thought you were telling us to exercise, because I just really don't want to do that.
yeah, I would never impose that obligation on anybody.
Well, the good thing is if the camera's shooting from here up, nobody's really going to know if I'm gaining weight or not.
That's correct. That's correct.
You said you lost 20 pounds from COVID, Maryanne.
I was on the COVID diet. Yeah.
You did, yes.
I'm trying to keep it off, working on it.
Well,
We'll
kids
see.
got you busy, right?
That's right. So any other questions for Stephanie? No?
No.
Okay,
I'll see
Gary,
you.
you're up. You're up, Gary.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hi.
We
Hi,
are
Gary.
great.
Hi,
How are
Gary.
you?
Good.
I'm glad to see you supporting the country with the American flag. Very cool.
So all things are well. Obviously, volume down, as everybody knows, as far as inspection. We're not
How
doing
many do you
drive-by.
usually do in any given week, and how many are you doing now? Just to give the audience like a perspective of transactions
Starting
there.
in April, I averaged 12 to 15 a week. Now I'm probably 3 to 4.
Well, that's still good. I mean, considering, you know, I mean, I'm not saying it's good for business, but I think, you know, people are out there, and that's a
Oh,
positive.
yeah, no, they're there. It's different. We're not doing drive-by inspections yet, so don't get nervous.
Mm-mm.
I can't even imagine. I can't.
I am finding a lot less attendees, which is a good thing. People are, you know, obviously practicing and staying away.
Actually, that was my question, because on other inspections, BC, before COVID, so there's before COVID, you know, AC after COVID, and during COVID, DC. But, you know, there is generally, you know, it could be the buyers, the grandparents, the parents, the kids, like 9,000 people in these inspections. Who are you finding to be turning up for these inspections? And sometimes the seller stayed behind, which is not necessarily always a good idea, but, you know, you could have a lot of people there. So
For
what
the
does that
most-
look like now?
Well, for the most part, buyer only,
Mm-hmm.
realtor.
Like one party of the
Well, yeah.
buyers?
I rather one. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I kind of send out an email after the booking and just kind of mention just essential people. If you're not important, you know, then don't come.
Okay, so everybody's important in the family, I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
But other than that, you know, and realtors, I'm finding a lot of them are now kind of hanging out in their car
Mhm.
and really not, you know, coming in. Today, I had no client. They chose to opt out of being there, which is fine. I have a bunch of those now.
They trust you.
That you know, the inspection, believe it or not, goes quicker. You just got to add extra photos. You know, you try to be a little more, you know, a little more camera happy so that they get a
Detail.
better visual. And then after the inspection, you're going to spend, or I do, especially today. I missed my exit. I was on the phone an hour. But right after the inspection, you kind of got to tell them what you found, give them a heads up prior to the report because they weren't privy to that. So, you could tell them, hey, I found this. You're going to see a picture. It's minor, relax, just noting, and then you'll get the call after they get the report, but they still get it. They understand it. They're not confused, but you call them right after the inspection, like an hour later, give them that 30-minute briefing, tell them.
Are they pretty comfortable with that as opposed to physically being there and figuring out how the mechanicals work or something?
I'm finding, yes, very, very much so. And then there has been an occasional, as far as like you're saying, amount of people. Like 2 weeks ago, the buyer brought her mom and 2 kids.
Oh,
Wow.
And I was a little abrupt and said, listen, you're not coming in.
Yeah.
Not with me here. You're not.
What are you doing to protect yourself? Because you're actually exposing yourself way more than we even are, right? So you could be in 2-3 houses a day. What are you doing to protect yourself?
Well, the obvious gloves, face cover. I actually clean my gloves constantly in my phone with spray hand sanitizers. Whenever I go through a room, I'll just wipe it down real quick. My stuff, my cameras, phone, that's basically what we're holding. I give out hand sanitizers at the end, single use.
Oh, nice. It's got your contact information on it. How did you get those in this time?
I ordered these about 6 weeks ago.
Before there was none left, right?
No, this is when it was just starting to get bad and I was running out of my old stock. So I made it in there. I was able to get 300 of them.
That's pretty good. Matt, do you have any questions for Gary?
He kind of answered a little bit there, but a lot of sellers become worried that, you're going to come through their home and the buyers and maybe the agents. So I'm just sort of wondering what sort of extra measures maybe that you take or other inspectors are taking to make the seller feel comfortable that you're in their home.
Well, they could be reassured that, I'm coming in going to be as clean as I can, health-wise, safety-wise. I got a video on my website, that kind of tells a bunch of little things about how we're trying to, even realtors, what they're attempting to do, to keep everybody safe.
And we can see that video. What's the website? Where?
I might be able to play it live. I might be able to share a screen here, and it's like a 1-minute video. It's quick.
Yeah, if you could pull it up.
But what I have on one inspection, though, I'm not sure if the agent did it or the seller, but I loved it. Every door was open in the home. Every light switch was on. Window shades were up. Cabinet doors were opened.
Oh, that was smart. Yeah.
That's a great tip for the agents when you're preparing the sellers. We did that on a couple of showings.
It was great.
We had the sellers open up all the kitchen cabinet doors, and the seller said, well, it's just not going to look as nice. And I said, right, but they've seen the pictures, and I think more importantly, they want to see the inside space. So I think that's a great tip.
That's a great idea.
The window shading, I like the idea that they pulled up the shades, because shades are, you got to fumble with them too much to get to a window. I thought that was great.
Yeah.
When bedroom doors open, closet doors were open, so it limits me touching anything. If it's open, I'm not closing it. It stays the way it is.
So I guess as a realtor, we could probably prep the seller to do that for the inspector before they come in.
Yeah,
that's a great idea.
If you're limiting what they're going to be touching, every switch plate and everything else,
that's a good idea.
It's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's certainly like anything else. Anything is going to help.
Yeah.
It's certainly wouldn't is not going to hurt. And it would only take 15 minutes to go through a house and do that if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's quite easy.
Yeah.
Rhonda, do you have any questions for Gary?
Yeah, I was wondering, have any of them asked you to do anything virtually? If they don't want to go, have they requested maybe you do a FaceTime? Maybe you get to the furnace and they're a first-time home buyer, and that's a question. Like, I know my people are always worried about the mechanics of the home. do you ever, have they requested a FaceTime at a certain point in the inspection or?
So far, no.
Okay.
So far, no. And the agent, if the agent's there with me, if she's not, he or she, if she's not in the car and is with me, the one today was actually calling the client, like after I did something, like after I got done in the basement and gave him the
Update.
I give him the Reader's Digest version of the basement and mechanical, and then he'd be on the phone.
Okay.
So he was kind of like the immediate contact, not me. Until afterwards, like I said, when it was all done, then I was on the phone with them for quite a while.
For the recap.
Yeah, and there'll be another recap when they get the report. But at least they kind of feel like they were there, so they get the report. It's not a shocker. What the worst thing is you don't show up, you don't know anything, and then this report comes, and sometimes it could be alarming, and you freak out. But if you give them the 40 minutes afterwards, because technically your inspection is going to be 40 minutes shorter, because you're not talking to nobody, and nobody's coming.
The conversation and the interruption.
Right, nobody's talking to you, nobody's yelling at you, so it goes smooth. But you get 40.
I think we're working harder because first we're doing virtual tours of the house, and then we're making an appointment to bring them out.
Yeah, but it helps, that conversation. You set them at ease prior to the report, so they don't read into it like, the house is going to fall down. You tell them it's a minor crack, caulk it. They like to hear.
Yeah.
Makes them a little more comfortable.
Michele?
Well, he answered my question already. I was going to ask
start
about
letting
that.
you go first.
Yeah, really. I was
All
going
of
to
these
ask
experts
about.
are talking so well about their given topics that they're covering all the questions before they get to you.
Yep. It's
Does
all
anybody
covered.
else on the call have a question for Gary? No? Do any of the experts have anything additional to add? Did they forget anything?
I just want to mention one thing about cash deals. On occasion, we do get cash deals. And I will tell you, with the market, the situation with the market going in a downward spiral, some of my clients purchasing with cash had concerns about pulling the additional monies needed out of their investments when they were already at a low. So we have also been working with professionals like Tammy to either quickly try to secure financing with the interest rates being lower, to not prolong the closing, because don't forget, sellers accepted the buyer's offer as a cash deal and had ramifications with that. But we are trying to be a little creative with either trying to get a quick mortgage for part of it so that they're not at a deficit with their investment. Sometimes we're doing lines of credit on existing properties to offset. So we've been working with those cash buyers that now find that they're nervous with the way the market went. So those, again, just being a little patient, may delay closing a week or two until they secure what makes them comfortable. It's been working.
So how are the sellers and the sellers' attorneys responding to that? So they accepted this offer, it's a cash offer, and now we're dropping the bomb and saying, you know what, as a result of the current situation, we want to finance it. How are they responding to that?
Well,
Because
at first,
there's going to be an extra timeline to get that pre-approval, right?
sometimes. I mean, I had two of my transaction cash deals had another 45 days to close and really did not delay the closing, but a couple of mine have had delays with closing. And I've been on both sides. I've been seller's attorney for a cash deal that have delayed, and I've been a buyer's attorney, cash deal delayed. And of course, as attorneys, we send out the huff and gruff letter. This is a cash deal. There shouldn't be any delays, blah, 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 blah. But ultimately, we understand that there is a pandemic, and we have to counsel our clients accordingly. I mean, no one thought, people have lost hundreds and hundreds of $1,000s in the market. Mm-hmm. So everyone needs, again, courtesy, kindness, respect, understanding, and working together to get the deal happen without a significant delay.
Yeah.
You know,
And to the cash point, I mean, we prioritize heavily purchase transactions. There's a contract, you know, purchase transactions, we're doing a ton of refis, but they take a back seat. Refinances are experiencing delays. Our purchase transactions are not. You know, if a buyer is qualified, so if a buyer is qualified, we can close a purchase in 30 days.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear that the purchases are taking priority, obviously for self,
100%.
you know, on
Yeah.
behalf of my clients, because that could be frustrating in the transaction. So if there were delays with that, I know I'm working on a deal right now and there has been a delay in financing. And as a result, the sellers lost an opportunity for a rental and they're not happy. I don't think it was a result of a delay because there was a priority with refinancing versus this, but I know that happens. And then, you know, we kind of have to suffer the consequences of all of those emotions and trying to keep everything in check. So I'm excited to hear that that is a priority. Anybody else have anything fabulous to contribute? Gary, did you find your video?
Oh, yeah, I have it.
Wanna show it to us?
Let me see if I can do a screen share.
All right, while you're doing that, if anybody's out there on Facebook Live and they have any questions for the experts, you can certainly reach out to me on my cell, 551-206-9264, or I'm sure that you know all of the agents that were in this panel, and we're happy to answer any of your questions. So go ahead, Gary, pull it up.
Hold on.
I hear it.
Hold on. Hang on.
Hey, this is almost like waiting for me to get off of the other meeting before.
Hey, Gary, get one of the children in to help you.
Can you see it?
Not
No.
yet.
Can you see that?
No,
You.
no, can't see, Gary. Anybody else see it?
No.
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 All right, so why don't we do this? Gary, why don't you tell everybody your website slowly so they can write it down?
Oh, wait a minute.
There
You
it goes.
started sharing.
Oh, wait. We see
Now
your
we got it.
You're a genius.
See that? I don't need my kids.
Yeah. Nursing home is around the corner. Go ahead, Gary.
Hit play, Gary.
You froze.
We lost Gary.
Gary's gone.
Gary's frozen.
Nothing, huh? All right. Listen, I just want to thank everybody for being on this call. I think it was super beneficial and helpful. Do you guys all feel the same way?
Yeah.
I do. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you very much. It was great.
Absolutely.
Fill out a call with any questions. Even if I'm not handling your case, I'll be happy to assist.
Thank
Same.
you.
Thanks.
I don't know about Gary on this.
I think he needed his children.
Yeah. You could borrow mine.
All right. Well, you know, Gary's website is homeinspectionsbygary.com if anybody wants to watch this video. Otherwise, I guess we'll end the call, and I hope everybody stays safe and healthy, and I hope there's a vaccine soon so that we can feel more comfortable getting out there and living our life again. Going to
He's really advertising on your FaceTime chat, your Facebook thing.
Good.
Thank you for the invite, Maryanne. Great to speak with you. Everybody stay healthy and well. Thank you for inviting me.
Same to you.
Nice
Thank you.
to see you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks, all.
Take care.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.